Hello and welcome to the world of property joint ventures. Yes, this week we'll discuss what joint ventures are, whether you should get involved, and tips for both before and during the project to make them successful. So let's start with what a joint venture is. Do you want to start?
I don't even know what JV stands for.
JV,
I use the word all the time.
JV, joint venture.
Right.
Hey, there you go. Tick. So hopefully you all know where we're in now. You've got us laughing, so that's the key. So yeah, JV, joint venture, and it's one of the most widely used sort of terminologies in property. Certainly on all property.
Is it only in property?
No, but I do want to focus it on property mainly because that's where we know what we're talking about. But I think.
But do we?
Ish. But I think it's obviously more widely used. Certainly in businesses, there's lots of joint ventures going on. We're not going down that route, but I'm sure this would apply to sort of most upstart projects that people might go on a joint venture for. But we're going to focus on the property world for now. So yeah, JV, and it's used by loads of property gurus.
Just going into business with someone.
Yeah, basically going into a project, not necessarily business, but yeah, business minded. Going down a venture with somebody else.
Does it have to be something to make
money? At least somebody else. No, I don't think it necessarily has to be to make money. But it's using it's doing something collaborativing with someone else.
Going on holiday together, could that be a joint venture?
1 minute 39 in there. No. So we're saying let's just say it's for the purpose of making money for now. Although it could be a venture to not necessarily make money, but to bring a greater good. That could necessarily be a joint venture. So, but let's keep it as in our heads for property for now, and then we know what we're kind of talking about. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily just have to be one person. I think that's something to bear in mind. You could have 3, 4 multiples, but it tends to be 2 or 3 around that number.
For ease.
For ease, and it's really that's what it is instead of going alone. So the different types, there's broadly 3 sort of different types of joint venture. The most simple, I guess, is where person A loans money to person B. Now sometimes this is just called a loan agreement and won't have anything to do with the project itself.
So is that a joint venture?
No, that wouldn't be. But other times it is tied into the project. So it might be that the money is given for a specific purpose, say to build a house, and the money is repaid after that house is done up. There might be security on that house, i.e. a person A loaning the money might get essentially a charge on that property. So if it all goes wrong, they get the property. So that's the most basic, and that can work for person A and for person B. Person A gets the security, and person B gets obviously the cold hard cash. The other sort of 2 types are where the parties are slightly more, I guess, interlinked, and that might be where similar kind of thing where person A gives the money, but it's more where instead of just getting pure interest, they may have the outcome of the project will depend on how much sort of profit they make. So it's almost a profits sharing adventure where person A is also taking on the risk. So he might be giving the money, but if the project goes on to make £50,000, he stands to make £25,000. It's not a direct amount, but if the project only makes £10,000, then he's only got £5,000. So it's very different scenario 2 to scenario 1, where scenario 1, person A is getting a guaranteed sum. Scenario 2, he's sort of dependent on the risks of the project. And then there's sort of number 3, if you like, which is where it's not necessarily for a set project, but might be for something more long term. So it's not where you're going to sell something after 6 months or 12 months or 18 months, however long the development might take. It might be where you're planning on holding something. So it's like in scenario B, where person A is giving, scenario 2, where person A is giving money. It is like that, but it's where there is more of a focus on the long term, and they might be looking to do another 2, 3, 4 projects within the sphere of that joint venture. Okay.
There you go. Was that the end?
That's not the end now. We've just got to what a joint venture is. So why would you look to do one? There's only really one reason. why there's lots of good byproducts which we'll go into as to the result, but there's really one reason why I think
I've got two.
Okay, well let's
any up on that?
Well, there is. I've got four, but it's not a competition. But I've only got one reason why you should actually enter it. There's other reasons that have good stuff that have come out of it. But as far as I can see, there's one.
Okay, I've got one good reason.
One good reason. Okay, go.
Because that person who you JV with has something to offer that you don't have.
There you go. That to me is the reason to do it, because why else would you bother? You can go and play tennis with that other person if you just want.
But I've got another reason.
Okay, go on. Give me another reason.
Lessens we'll go back. The risk.
I don't really like that.
The financial risk.
Yeah, but then if it's a good enough project, you should be willing to take on the risk.
There's risk in everything.
There's risk in everything. Yeah, so why would you just pull someone else in for limit the risk?
Some people aren't risk A. Some people are
risk B. Yeah. I know you've told that before. I think on the podcast.
It's too good not to use again.
But let's go back to your first one, because I do like that, and that's what I had in mind. Is that basically someone is providing something that you've not got, right? Now, in a property deal, or in probably most walks of life, there's three elements really that you need. Do you want to say what they are?
Most walks of life.
In terms of business ventures.
Food, shelter,
business ventures. Go on. So in property, what are the three pillars? Three pillars of success that I think if you've got these three, you're probably golden.
Your numbers right?
No, I'm talking like what you actually need. So
you need money.
You need money, number one.
And you need. I don't know.
If you've got money, exactly. Well, if you've got money, then
you get money in the long term. You can do
probably long term. You might not do that well. You might go and buy the wrong stuff. So what
you need knowledge,
expertise. Yeah. Good. Now, one other thing, because you might have all of that, but
builder.
No, because that's you need something to put all that into place. So what have you got that you need? So you need to do all this. There's lots of steps, as you know, in the business in a property venture. So what do you need to put all those steps together?
A brain.
Time. Brain would be some sort of expertise. So you need time. So there's those three pillars, I think, of what you need. So that's money, expertise, and time. And if you've got all three, I think you're probably going to be successful. You probably don't need to. Well done to you. You can probably switch off at this point. Save yourself however long we've got left. And you probably don't need anybody else. But the chances are you probably haven't got all three. You may not have all the money, you may not have as much time in the world, and you may be lacking something in expertise. Now, the aim is that person A lacks one of them, but person B has got the other two, or anything along those lines, and it's a match made in heaven. So they come together, and between the two of them, or between the three of them, they manage to get each limb or each leg of the triangle.
Side.
Tripods. I don't really know what I was thinking. Anyway, side of the triangle. Yeah. So you've got all three bases covered.
A triangle.
Now, we do projects, just the two of us, and in some projects we have got all three.
I've definitely got the expertise.
But it tends to be that in the bigger projects, certainly, and this is where we tend to need finance for, and that's obviously where we use investors. And that's the sort of limb that we think we're missing.
We say, look, all this knowledge and time we've got.
And that's what the investors are looking for.
Time enough to make these podcasts.
They're looking for the knowledge and they're looking for the time. So it's a trade-off. Now, it's not just as simple as that, though, because if it was, everything would be hunky-dory. But you've got to explore if you can find that resource somewhere else. So money is the obvious one. So when we do work with investors, we're obviously giving a big share of the profit away. Now, if there's a great deal, do we want to give up X% of that deal? Possibly. Now, you got to look at the alternative. So, what would be the alternative instead of using someone else's money?
Using our money.
No. Well, let's just say we don't have
the bridging.
Bridging, exactly. So you probably might not be able to, borrow it all, let's say, from a bank. So yeah, it's bridging, which can be very expensive. So you've got to work out risk A. You've got to work out the trade and where you feel most comfortable with. Is it basically losing some of the profit share, or are you happy to lose some of the profit share and instead of going down the bridging route. So the chances are you might be able to find one of the free resources from somewhere else. Equally, I guess with time, you could say, well, you could give up something of your life potentially and get the time or learn the expertise. We've kind of learned a lot of the expertise ourselves.
On the job.
Some of the stuff Ronnie is just naturally fantastic at, but she's also learned a lot, and I've learned. And so that person...
And some of the stuff Gary's also naturally fantastic at.
Thanks. But that person could, in theory, also learn that knowledge. So why should they basically throw their money at it and on a project when they could keep the money to themselves, go and learn it, and spend their time doing it, and get 100% of the profit. So both people have got to work out whether they can find that extra leg of the triangle from somewhere else, or whether they are happy with the investor. Okay, you got that? You happy?
Most of our investors
don't have the time, don't have the expertise, and that's why it works well.
They're expertised in something else, which is why they're able to invest.
Exactly.
And why would they waste their time
when they can do their time is better spent doing what they are doing.
Day job.
Now, that is the only reason I think to enter into a joint venture, but there are some very good things that come out of it. Now, your point before was that you're kind of splitting the risk. Now, I get what you're saying to that, but as I said, you would only want to take on a project that everyone is comfortable, that you would be comfortable in taking on yourself. So if we did have all that money, I would find it that we would be using it and we would be going down that route. So I wouldn't want to split the risk, because I wouldn't see it necessarily as that risky, or that hopefully we've covered our risk. But there are other things, and I think one of them is accountability. And this is something I think we both, certainly me, has enjoyed having other people in the background, because not necessarily wouldn't crack on with the project in the same way, but it's useful to have someone sort of in the background saying, right, can you give me an update? Or we know we've got to give them an update. And it helps us basically deliver.
I think I did quite well.
You did well beforehand, but I don't know. I just find
it's
that
not changed my attitude.
Okay, well, maybe it has mine, because I just want to, I guess, impress them.
I just find it an extra pressure.
Okay, so that's actually going to come on to our conclusion possibly at the end. But so already you've got sort of two different potential mindsets. But for me anyway, it gives me that extra someone using their money, so you've got to make sure that they are happy and that eventually it works out well just for them equally as much as you. And I also like the fact that it does give you another pair of eyes. So one of the projects that we were involved with, it went to closed bid scenario, and we had lots of discussions about what to bid, and it's just useful, I think, to actually bounce it off.
Just useful, because when he asks me, I go, no.
Yeah, when it comes to that. And so sometimes you might think,
actually, no, and then I do give suggestions, and then he laughs at me.
Oh, yeah.
You do.
You want to offer something double or something.
Yeah. I wanted it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just useful to get other people's point of view, especially the people that have been successful.
People's point of view who he respects.
No, I do respect you, but who have been successful in other walks of life. I find it interesting. Not always, but I find that they can offer a different spin on it, which helps me improve in my learning as well. And that was
positive, man.
That's the sort of the third thing I was going to say in terms of it. Yeah, that it was also helps me in terms of growth I can learn from them. So it's not necessarily just to bounce ideas off, but their approach I can then take forward as well. So you've got one main reason as to why you should go into joint ventures, but there's probably quite a few others that I put forward, and maybe other people have got as well, which come as a result of entering into a joint venture, which I don't think can be dismissed. So if there's a choice of borrowing that money and actually the economics all work out the same, then potentially you'd say, okay, well, I'll go down the joint venture route because this is going to give me these other things. But, and I think this is, again, potentially coming to the end, but we'll be saying, well, it might also give you a headache that you might want to do without. Okay? It's just a couple of useful...
You've got to get on with these people.
Yeah, a couple of useful tips before we sort of wrap up, which is that you've got to know what you want from this project. So are your goals aligned? You both might just say, I want to get rich. and I think this project's going to work because it's going to make us $1 million. Well, you both might not want that from that particular thing. What's your timescales? Does person A want it to finish a lot sooner? So you both be crystal clear about what's going on here, and have specific objectives. So in the case where person A is doing everything and person B is doing nothing but give the money, it's fairly clear. But it might be that two mates go in together, both of them said they're going to do a bit, and both of them are going to put in a bit of money. Well, what roles are you going to have then? I've been part of disputes in my former career where person that exact thing happened and person B ended up doing nothing. So they get annoyed because person A is then doing absolutely everything. It's like, well, this is not what we agreed, but they had nothing written down. So it's kind of have it very clear as to what your defined roles are. And if the business starts to change a bit, well, then you need to work out again what you're going to be doing going forward. And I think sort of with that, you should be thinking of the worst case scenario as well. So it's not just a case of, we're going to get rich and I'm going to do this to make sure we get rich and he's going to do this to make sure we get rich. It's
we always have a what if everything goes wrong.
So what happens if there's an overspend? Okay, it's probably the most obvious when it comes to property.
What happens if person A wants to sell?
Or person B dies, or what have you. So think about all these kind of eventualities and how they might play out. Now you can't think of everything, but if you've got a framework, you can't say what happens if it's, or we're going to whatever about the project, but you might be able to think, well, to a certain extent, what happens. And then I think to tie those two things up, so you've got your objectives, you've got the what ifs, you need to get that written down. It's a very useful framework, and it's not just everyone hates lawyers, everyone hates agreements, but you can make it fairly basic, and you can do it in as much, fairly plain English, just so that everyone understands it.
Is there like a template you can download?
It's risky to use a template. You can use, as long as it's only a starting point. Speak to me if there's kind of, you want a good starting point. I think the point is that you can just take a precedent, your starting point, and then you could end up with clauses that you don't need. I think the key is, and if you've got no legal background or anything, is to get it written down on a piece of paper very clearly in plain English what you need, and then maybe you can just go to a lawyer for a couple of hours of their time to just make sure it's all documented in the way you want it. So you can get a precedent, but make sure it is written down. And I would say, to sort of finish off of tips during the project is just be honest and open throughout, and keep up that line of communication. And a final point is that keep updating as well, as in things might go wrong. Don't just be afraid to talk about it. Put up your hand and say, this has happened, we're going to need to do this, come up with solutions, and then hopefully you will have a happy marriage. Like us. Exactly. So just to conclude, do you want to do the conclusion?
No,
not that. No, the general conclusion to what we're saying. I think it's what we were touching on before, which is that,
I don't know what the conclusion is.
Is that JVs are really good if you need somebody else for a certain thing that's lacking, but that does come at a cost in profit share. And going back to what Ronnie was saying before, is that you may not want to be answerable to that person, so you may want to find another solution. But like me, you may actually prefer it.
I'm quite happy with.
Okay, you are happy. You've done a U-turn. I've persuaded you. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's
You've
pressure.
Got to answer. I mean, yeah, because things do go wrong, and you've got to hold your hands up and go, oops.
There you go.
There you go.
Good luck and enjoy if you are going to enter into such a JV.
And make sure you like them.
Yes, we'll come on to that next week.
Okay. The content of this podcast is for general information purposes and not a recommendation to act. Please contact us or an independent financial advisor if you would like to discuss further. Contact us at gary.financialfreeman@gmail.com.
Goodbye for now.
Bye.